Yay! I'm with Tom. Time with Tom. Um, I don't remember the theme song. Uh,
There isn't one.
there was a theme song. I'll have to go
I
back and
like the
listen to
sort of news ticker like that.
it. It's time with Tom. Doing that like
Yeah.
1940s news voice. Um, yeah. Here on the Zoom. Uh, all right, Tom, welcome. Uh, bookstore owner, mystery writer, editor extraordinaire, assister. That is a word. Assisting all new writers publish and navigate their things. Is
And
there anything?
typewriter repairman.
Are you a typewriter repairman?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Just manuals.
Wow. How long have you been doing
I can't
that?
do electrics. About 7 or 8 years. You never heard that story? It's
No.
almost as good as the blacksmith story, except I
Yeah.
have like one tool that I use for everything instead of 500 tools.
Oh, that's better.
Uh, and you know what I use? I use dental picks.
No way.
Yeah, it's so cool. I'm like, hey, can I help you with your teeth?
That's really
Uh,
funny.
yeah, this crazy old engineer, like 82-year-old guy, was really into typewriters. People get really into typewriters. I
Yes.
mean, I
Yeah.
think they're fun. And before anyone, calls in, I
Yeah.
yes,
People are
Tom,
coming for Tom.
I know Tom Hanks likes typewriters.
Yeah.
Um, everyone let me know that Tom Hanks collects typewriters. I'm like, yeah, I know. Um, but anyway, he was like, hey, I fix up typewriters, but I don't have a shop. Can I show some in your window on like consignment? I was like, sure. They brought so many people in. You could watch out the window. People just
Wow.
stopped dead on the sidewalk. And then after a couple of years, he's like, yeah, I'm getting too old for this. And he gave me all this stuff. And I wanted to keep doing it. And so, I grew up working in a bike shop. So it's very much the same skill set.
That's so cool.
And it's really fun to work on something that's all cause and effect.
Yeah.
Like everything's connected. It's not like trying to fix your Epson printer where you're like, I don't know.
Oh man.
Um, and remarkably, they did not really generalize. So every model of typewriter is different on the inside.
No,
So everyone's like a totally new challenge.
that's amazing. I
Yeah,
love
I
that.
mean they a little bit, right? But like the bell might be in a different place, whether if it's a Royal or whatever, and
That's really
it's a lot of
funny.
fun.
Did you train to
Um,
type on a typewriter? I did.
yeah, um I had a free semester my senior year, and my homeroom happened to be the typing room, and I was like, yeah, I'll take this.
Nice.
Best class I took in high school. When I got to college, I'm right in that transitional period where you would handwrite your paper and then you would sign up at the computer lab for one of the 12 computers for the
Yep.
1200 students. There were 12 computers. Um,
Oh my gosh, we're so old.
the the kids who had their own PCs in their room would bring their 5.5-inch floppy disk to the computer lab to
Hmm.
print out their papers.
Yep.
Uh, and this is the best part. I mean, these were single color monitors, right? Green or amber
Yeah.
monitors, totally DOS. And there was this special thing where if your other high school friends went to swanky colleges, you could send them electronic messages.
Yeah. Yep. I
And
remember
this
when I got
was,
my first email address
yeah, so this
at
was,
my university. Yeah.
but it was before Windows. I mean,
Oh, I'm not that old.
it was email, but it was all DOS. It was crazy. It was
No,
really
I
neat.
had AOL in high school. I had an AOL address
Yeah.
in high school because they mailed out the discs. So it was like
Yeah.
free. Yeah. So I was fat free ham at AOL.com. That was my
But I don't understand that reference at all.
I was
Um,
I had a there was a guy, I was in a chat room trying out AOL, and a guy told me that he was the Messiah, and when he became king, he was going to bring everybody fat free ham and cholesterol free cheese. And I was like, that's a good handle. I'll be fat free
yeah,
ham. Yeah.
sure. Uh, anyway, I was right on that cusp where by my senior year, most people had a PC in their room,
Okay.
but it moved really, really fast. So that was 1988 to 1992.
Okay.
Um,
Now, see, I graduated high school in 96, so I'm a little after you. But I did have my typing because I went to a ghetto high school. We did have a typing class, but it was like manual typewriters. And I remember we had a teacher who would sit at the desk while she read a book and just call out ASDF JKL Sim, ASDF JKL Sim. And then you just had to like, yeah, it was great.
Great. It's not time with Tom. It's olden times with
It's olden
Tom.
times with Tom. It's the
He's
old
so old.
days.
He remembers cord phones that were attached to the wall.
Look, kids, come see Tom. Um, yeah, no, I I would definitely I have such an obsessive personality that like if I had the money and the space, I would totally collect typewriters.
It's
I
crazy.
would
I
be
mean,
obsessive about it.
I
Yeah.
have like one nice one in the house just to goof around on, but I regularly talk to people who are like, yeah, I have 13.
Yeah, I would
Like, where do
totally do that.
where,
I'd display
where
them.
do you even put them?
Yeah. My wife recently was like, "Hey, would you like to get into vinyl?" And I was like, "Get behind me, Satan. What are you doing? What are you doing?" It's like, "No. You know me. Don't give me anything to obsess over." I already have too many jobs. If you get me vinyl, that will be my new job. I will just be fine. Fine
I did
vinyl.
I did get 6 albums from the Columbia Record and Tape Club when I was in 6th grade. So
Hey, do you still have them?
no.
Do you remember what they were?
I do, caveat, I grew up in Maine where we listened to WBLM, which was hard rock,
Oh,
or we listened to the Grateful Dead. Those were your choices. Um, until I got older and found, and I didn't have, my parents didn't listen to music, so I didn't have like
mm-hmm.
Dylan and Simon and Garfunkel. I
Yeah.
found all those guys later. It wasn't until my friend's sister went to UNH, which is University of New Hampshire, and came home with like all the cool stuff,
Yeah.
the Smiths and
Yeah.
U2 and 10,000 Maniacs and all those guys. But no, it was basically WBLM was straight up rock and roll. So I had so this would have been 1983, 82, somewhere around there. I had Freeze Frame, Jake Giles band,
Okay.
um, Journey, Escape, Foreigner 4, um,
Nice.
Asia Alpha, and
Okay.
then two that were actually good, which was Ghost in the Machine, Police,
Yeah.
and Pat Benatar. I can't remember the name of it, but
Okay.
it's just Pat Benatar.
Yeah. My my
Not
parents.
really my speed of music anymore.
That's really funny. My parents only listened to Kenny Rogers and Neil Diamond, and we had every record they ever made on vinyl. We also had all the Bill Cosby records. My dad was a huge Bill Cosby fan, so that's all I knew. And then when I got to high school, I went to an all African American inner city high school. There's lots of P Daddy or Puff Daddy. Puff Daddy. I don't remember what he's going
Yeah,
by then.
it's way after my
Yeah,
time.
but yeah, he was. There's lots of rap. Master P, lots of rap. I didn't really get into that. I was only allowed to listen to the Christian radio station, um, Shine FM, and so I was very into DC Talk. I was convinced that Toby Mac going yeah boy in the back of songs was like the coolest thing ever. But then I got to college and met my wife, and she introduced me to things like Dave Matthews and U2 and Bill Withers, and I was like, what have I been doing
Ooh,
with my life?
that's a lot of catching up to do.
Oh man.
That's a lot of catching
Speaking,
up to
did
do.
I mention the obsessiveness of
Yeah.
yeah,
You
it
remind
was
me of
bad.
like Captain America when he's Winter Soldier. He's got the little notebook of all
Oh, it
the
was totally that way
of
with
all
music.
the
I was like
things.
writing down. I had a whole like 1 year of just listening to like the Rat Pack. Like I was just like,
Yeah.
who
Wow.
is this Sammy Davis person? Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, oh, we showed Flannery Do the Right Thing the other night, which was great.
Oh, how they like it?
Uh, they're a little non-committal.
Okay. Okay.
It's so out of context.
It is. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Spike Lee
mean,
movies are an interesting time capsule.
well, especially, again, I keep coming back to like I was a white teenager in Maine, or when it came out, I was like, oh, 20
Mm,
something, but and it was like, whoa,
yeah.
just whoa,
What
on
is
so
happening
many
in
levels.
Brooklyn? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really funny. All right. We should talk
Anyway.
about writing.
Yeah,
Um,
I know you don't edit, but you should probably like cut the first
not
10
cut
minutes off
nothing.
this.
No, no edits. It all stays.
I am now part of the problem.
That's
Man,
right.
I can't even complain anymore.
That's right. You used to yell about Laura and I spending like 30 minutes talking about nothing
I loved
before
it.
we
I
got to
just
the
wanted
stuff.
a time signature so that if I was in a hurry, I
You
could
can
jump
skip ahead.
forward. Like
Skip
when I
to
got to
the
talk,
end. Yeah.
I love the talk when I got nothing else to do. Okay.
Okay, focus. Tom. All right. First question. What are you working on?
Oh, I'm pulling out a manuscript that I did 25,000 words on last year and then stopped because it has dual POVs and of course have signed up for the dialogue dash.
Yeah, Dialogue Dash starting
Dun,
April
dun,
1st.
dun, dun.
Boom.
Yeah. I mostly just because I didn't want to miss out.
Yeah.
I mean, if you haven't, no offense, your videos are always great, but like, having seen JP do his like, "Hi, it's 5 a.m. and everything's great."
Yeah.
I mean, it's great. I
It's
can't
great.
miss
Yeah.
those. And the puppets.
The puppets were
It
great.
better be
There are
puppets.
puppets. Yeah, it's there are puppets that appear in videos. Yeah, no, I tell people like they're like, I'm not working on a book right now. I'm like, it doesn't matter. It's $80. It's totally worth it. Just being a part of the chaos. It's fun. Yeah.
Yeah. So I stopped in the middle because it was starting to feel a little derivative from some of my sort of things that had given me ideas. And then I was like, you know
Yeah.
what? This is a little bit too much like such and such. Um, and I had some other character issues to deal with, and constantly trying to figure out whether it was two first person POVs or
Yeah.
what was it. So anyway, I'm gonna pull that back out, and when I'm done with that, I'm gonna be all ready to start writing my cozy mystery series, which I'm very excited about, actually.
Yeah. So I'm gonna give you a secret that JP Laura and I haven't told anybody yet. We made another workbook for this one, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
multi-vehicle workbook, and it is 100 pages longer
Awesome.
than
Although I
the
printed
first
the I, although I
workbook.
printed the other one out.
Yeah, this
Uh,
one you can buy as a paperback,
I think I'll
hopefully,
just buy it rather than.
if Amazon cooperates. Um, you never know with Amazon if they're gonna
Okay.
actually like put your stuff up. I like put it up to go up on Amazon like last week, and Amazon's like, "Thank you. We may or may not post this within the month." It's like, yeah. So we'll
Uh,
see.
yeah, so that's creative stuff, and then work stuff. I'm hammering through some old work, but I also just signed someone who's working on a fantasy series, which is great because
Oh, nice.
those are my highest desired clients are ones who are like on book one of a series and just want to learn how to make it better.
Yeah.
And
What are you editing? Developmental
it'll be
editing? What are you
it'll be
doing with it?
developmental
Okay.
editing. Yeah.
Nice.
I do this thing that I don't think we had a nice actually we had anyway, I do this thing that I don't think a lot of other developmental editors do, which is I skim read the whole manuscript.
Oh, really?
So because who am I? Just some guy. Like I'm
Yeah.
not on, I'm not on Readsy or whatever. So when somebody gives me a manuscript, I skim read it and then I say, all right, if you hire me, you know, to do your
Oh, you skim read it
project,
before anybody pays you.
I skim read it before anyone pays me.
Damn. Nice.
I mean, it's a skim, but
But
like,
still.
uh, and then I tell them, like if I'm going to developmentally edit your thing, I'm going to be focused on these things because I can clearly see that
Oh, that's
you
nice,
have
man.
these problems, and like their eyes light up
Yeah, seriously.
because
You've
they
actually like paid
realize
attention to them.
they realize that I paid attention and actually that I've pointed out something that you know. And then there's the people that run away because they wanted to be done.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Right. So because
Yeah.
I also do that for line editing
Hmm.
clients. So I say, a lot of people just come, they think their manuscript's done and they want me to format it and publish it. And I say, yeah, great. Would you like some comments? or or do you want me to just do,
Oh
just do
man.
grammar and thing? And if they're like, oh no, tell me what you think. And then I usually get clients out of that.
Yeah, I
Uh,
tell people I coach all the time. They're always like, when do I know I'm done? And I'm like, well, there isn't a hard line. It's kind of a fog.
it's when you
And
can't bear to go through it one
yeah,
more
it's
time.
so you kind of decide when you're done.
Yeah.
That's when you're done.
But
Yeah.
no, this guy is great because he's great writing and great character. He's fabulous world building. But it was just,
Nice.
but it's, and this is why I stick to early career authors, because I'm not that great, and it's the same things. But
Yeah.
I love showing somebody these things. It's like, yeah, this passage has to be a scene, right? This passage has to be a scene,
Yeah.
um, or the classic is like, man, this is a really good scene, but you started it 2,000 words early.
Yeah. I need to
We don't
start in
we
the
don't
middle
need
of this thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't need any of that.
Yeah.
You could have started right here, and the
Yeah.
person's like, oh, you're so right. So
Yeah. It's tough, man. Yeah.
so
Are you
anyway,
working on anything
good
else?
guy, not 80 years old. I mean, not nothing against 80-year-olds, but
Yeah.
it's not, because I just took another job, which is a 80-year-old former bomber pilot's memoir, which
Okay. That's interesting.
whatever. Yeah, it's not really what
Yeah.
I like doing.
If he
So
can
yeah,
rush,
that's
if
what's
he
going
can
on.
rush it out, he can line it up with Masters of the Air. It just came out on Apple.
Maybe.
Yeah.
He's going to be one of those guys who keeps rewriting it. Keeps rewriting.
Okay.
Oh, I
Very
remembered
nice.
another story that's going to go in there.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah.
remember another story that's going to
Yeah. I had a
go.
ghostwriting client like that one time.
Yeah, just
That
never
I was
ends.
like, you got to nail it down, dude. We're gonna these the hundredth story you're adding to this. They're not adding to the book.
Yeah.
You're
No.
just putting things in for yourself. Yeah.
Then at home, making bread, playing board games.
Nice. Any board games specifically?
Yeah. Two. Do you play board? You
We
get that whole?
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So both of these are long games,
Okay.
which none of my kids have the patience for. But I've got three other guys that we get together once a week and play
Oh,
tabletop
nice.
games. One is Dune Imperium.
Okay.
Have you played Hogwarts Battle?
No.
Um, anyway, there's a sort of trend in games that are media connected to get publicity, but they actually like also absorb the media.
Yeah.
So like Hogwarts Battle, it's a deck building game, and but all the spells make sense with the books.
Nice.
But if you hadn't read the books, you could still play the game just fine.
Yeah, a lot of times
And
I love how those games become like actually like their own sequel to the book or the movie or whatever.
Dune's the same way. It's called Dune Imperium, not to be confused with the
Nice.
earlier Dune game, but this one is tied into the movies. It's got graphics that match the movies and everything. And
That's cool.
it's a deck builder, meaning you're buying cards that make your deck better, but you're also
Okay.
moving things around the board. But all of the cards are, different characters from the
That's
thing.
fun.
But it's a very sophisticated resource allocation
Okay.
game. It's really fun, but
Yeah.
it takes like 3 hours
Takes a
the
long
first time
time.
you play it, and then it takes like 2 hours after that.
Yeah.
And then the craziest game I've ever played is a new one called Nemesis,
Oh, I've
and
seen it. I haven't played it.
it is a horror movie.
Okay.
It is based loosely on Alien because it's not branded,
Nice. All right.
but you and the three other players start the game coming out of cryo in a ship that is damaged and has been overtaken by
Okay.
alien
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
gross
Yeah.
creatures. And you've got to get to the end, three engine rooms, and make sure that at least two of the engines are working. And then you've got to get to the bridge and make sure that you're headed to Earth by checking the
Gotcha.
coordinates. And then you're going to get back in the cryo without dying.
Nice. That's awesome. That's fun.
That's the stated goal, but each
Okay.
person also has their own private goal, which is
Ooh.
sometimes at odds with the other people. So
Nice.
yeah, there's double
That's fun.
crossing, but the mechanism, I don't know how they build these games. It's so genius. I mean, the mechanisms is such that every time you think you're almost there, something jumps out at you, just like a horror movie, right?
Wow.
Like, okay, I'm going to get into the escape pod, but I have to make a noise roll. And if it's bad roll, monster gets me and I don't get to it's just
Wow.
like things
Yeah.
jumping out at you constantly.
That's wild.
I have never played a board game where we were hooting and yelling and laughing so much.
That's funny. Yeah. See, those are the only kind of games we play. We play short games that
Yeah.
cause everybody to go crazy. So we were playing as a family a card game called Goat Lords. And you build your stack of goats and people can steal goats from you and like challenge your goats and take goats. And yeah. So we were playing that. That was fun. That's fun because you get to take goods from people. So that causes a lot of like
Right.
loud. We were just playing Farkle upstairs.
Yeah.
That's what we played tonight, is like a dice rolling game.
Have you
Um,
played Monikers?
no.
Monikers is a party game. It's great with families because the more inside baseball you've got, the better it
Nice.
is. So it's one part of it's like so it's a deck of cards with just random things on it, just totally random.
Okay.
Everything from like Simon and Garfunkel to like Grumpy Cat to
Nice.
Boris Yeltsin to it's just
Okay.
like all over the place. And the card has a little description of the thing. So if you've got a kid who doesn't know what the thing is, there's a description there
Yeah,
for them.
all the things you just listed, my kids would not know what those are.
Right. But they would know some of the things that you don't know.
Yeah.
You know. So you've got teams like charades. The first round is like $20,000 pyramid. You can say anything except the
Okay.
name,
Nice.
and they have to guess it.
Yeah.
And then the you go as far through the cards that you've picked as you can in a minute, and then the other team goes with the remaining cards, and it goes back. And
Okay.
if um but the mechanism that's great is that the second round uses the same cards.
Nice.
For the second round, you can only say one word, and it can't be the word on the
Oh,
top of the
yeah. So you
thing.
start remembering. You know what?
So you
I
start remembering.
have played this.
And then the third round is straight up charades.
Yeah, I have played
Yeah.
this game, and
But
it is a
again,
lot of
it's
fun.
charades with a deck of cards that you already, if
Yeah.
you have got a good memory, you know what
Yeah,
those
you
cards are.
remember all of them. Yeah, I have played this
But
because
yeah.
there was one card I remember we just kept pointing to my daughter because she could
Yeah.
never get it. And yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah,
anyway, that's one that all the kids loved.
yeah, that's fun. We also play. We just finished playing Azul. Have you ever
Oh,
played
Azul's
that?
fun. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so fun, and it's like it's
Pretty.
beautiful too. So it's a fun. Yeah.
You know, another good game that's pretty is only takes about 20 minutes to play. It's called Splendor. You should check it out.
I'll check it
It's
out. I might have
yeah,
seen that.
it's got these little it's cards and chips, and you're just trying to sort of build a
Nice.
mechanism that gets you points. But yeah, it's great.
We
I
were
could
really
talk
into
about board games all
Catan
day.
for a long time. We played Catan for
Mhm.
years. That was like our go-to family
That's a
game.
long game.
It is, yeah. And it's frustrating because you get kind of stuck on resources, but it's a
Yeah.
good game.
Ticket to Ride. Have you played Ticket to Ride?
Yeah, I
It's good.
played Ticket to Ride. That's a good one. Um, okay, what am I
All right.
working on? I
Yeah.
am man, I am going back and actually giving my original work a chance. That is the it has been decided through our Dialogue Doctor support team that like it's y'all's fault. Something that came out of, so we have a team that meets on Saturday mornings to like help each other move things forward, and the support team helped me see that like because my self-esteem was so low when I first started writing, I never actually gave any of my work a real chance. I kind of like wrote it, immediately hated it, put it into the world, and then never looked at it again. So I'm going back right now. I'm re-editing my first novel because, and part of the reason I'm giving it a chance is because I have two completely unfinished series. So I have to, they both are missing the final book. So I have to finish the series.
You might as well give it the whole thing a relook.
Yeah. So I'm just
Yeah.
giving, well, I don't remember what the books are about. So I kind of have to give the whole thing a relook to write the last book. I don't remember any of the plot threads I was missing. So yeah, so I'm doing that.
Yeah.
And as I'm doing it, I'm using Mid Journey to illustrate them, which is fun.
Totally cool.
Yeah, that's fun.
Which you uh you said that about self-esteem, but you left out another part of the conversation. It's also about, I think, where you're at financially, where like you're
Oh yeah.
trying something and it's not paying in the time frame that you would like, and so you abandon for something else.
Yeah, and that was
And
super
when you
true.
combine those two things, that
Yeah.
you know, so,
Yeah, when I wrote these first two series, there's a massive amount of financial pressure that I like needed money. So like, I couldn't spend money on things that weren't going to make it back. They all sold, like I was making back my investment, but I was not making any money. So I had to pull, I just had to
right.
like go try something else that would make money. It's funny, the second series, actually won an award from Page Turners. Not exactly. I got runner up from Page Turners. I got fourth place for the first series of the for the first book of the second series. And runner up, place one, two, and three were cash prizes, and runner up was a potential. There were cash prizes and a potential audiobook contract with Spectrum Audio. And then fourth place was just the potential audiobook contract. I think I was the only audiobook that year that Spectrum Audio picked up, and they grabbed all three of the books. And so it's funny because I forgot about it. And then Page Turners, I think, is like trying to expand their stuff. So they started tagging me on Instagram. I'm like, authors that won a Page Turner award and have quote unquote made it.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, well, first off, I didn't win. Like, it's like I got fourth place. Secondly, I don't know that Spectrum Audio did do some beautiful audiobooks of them, and they do sell every once in a while, but I just, I was laughing. I was like, I don't know that you could say that I quote unquote made it. Anyway, yeah, advertising. So I'm working on that. I'm doing we just finished that workbook for the Dialogue Doctor, and then I have a prompt book that I'm working on for Dialogue Doctor. I've written 100 prompts that are designed that like systematically take you through improving your dialogue. So they're like they're steps like that increase with difficulty. It's almost like a challenge book. Like, so that's what I'm doing now. I'm doing that, and I JP and I for the Dash, because I'm going to do the Dash too. I'm doing season 2 of Nerds. We're like 16 chapters out of 60 written and edited, and I need to finish it. So I'm going to do Nerds for my nationally recently deceased services,
Yeah.
Ghostbusters meets Brooklyn Nine-Nine books. Yeah, that's what I'm working on.
That's great.
Yeah. Okay, best story you've consumed lately.
Oh, we're because it's leaving Netflix in a month, we've been binge watching Community, and
It's so
it's
good.
gold.
It's so
It's
good.
yeah, the voices are phenomenal. Uh the ability to upset expectations is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
They'll give you three gags in a row that you can see coming a mile away, and then they'll pull a fourth one that like you never
Yeah.
saw coming.
Yeah.
Um and um and interesting because and not perfect. It gets a little repetitive because they basically have like three stories that they just tell over and over again with
Yeah.
different combinations of characters.
Yeah.
Um, and so, it's like this week, Annie's mad at Jeff, and they come to you know,
Yeah.
they realize it's basically realizing that you need to be kind to people, right? Like,
Yeah. I
and
mean,
respect,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They don't respect each other, and things go wrong, and in the end, they find newfound respect for each other, and they do that with different pairings over and over and over again. And I find that we've just done the first with 3 seasons, but that's the bulk of it because the like seasons 4, 5, and 6 get shorter and shorter and shorter.
Well, and
Um,
I was gonna say, like, I feel like there's 6 seasons. I feel like there's 3 seasons worth watching.
yeah, well, that may be where we stop, but
Season 1, they're kind of figuring things out. 2, 3, and 4 are gold.
oh, good, because I really felt like season 2 was sort of the height, the
Yeah,
peak.
3 and
But season
4,
1 I thought was great.
it's good. Yeah, 3 and 4 are amazing. That's where you get like the paintball and you get the pillow
Yeah,
fort episodes, and
yeah,
but then season 5 is the one where they start time traveling, or I'm sorry, interdimensional
right,
traveling. There's like a whole, yeah. And then season 6, it's like you guys shouldn't even be in college anymore.
right.
Like,
The
you guys are a 2-year community college, and you're 6 years there. Like it's time to move on. Yeah.
but it's produced by the same guys that did um Arrested Development. Um, and it's
I
written
didn't
by
know that.
somebody else. Yeah, you know what they then went on to run Marvel. I mean, this is
Oh,
the Russo brothers, the same
I I
guys who did Endgame and Infinity War
yeah.
did Arrested Development. Um, In fact, the stair car from the airport is in the airport scene in Civil War.
That's really
the
funny.
the Bluth stair car.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
That's hysterical.
the but and my problem with Arrested Development was that they're all despicable.
Yeah.
And they start out with Michael not being despicable, but by like season 3, he's just as
Yeah,
bad as
he
the rest of
descends
them.
into
And
madness.
yeah,
Yeah.
um,
Oh,
and they so it's like with Community, they're going to be despicable, but they're all going to come to little epiphanies every episode, and therefore we won't lose them forever. But it does get a little
yeah.
repetitive. But
Yeah.
um, anyway, specifically the character of Troy
Oh, he's amazing.
is
Donald Glover. Yeah.
everyone else
Childish
is
Gambino.
fairly uh, one note to more or less. They're playing their character is very, very
Mm-hmm.
solid, and Troy's character just really shows such a range uh of emotion and ideals, and he's just all over the place, and yet he's still Troy.
Yeah.
It's masterful. It's really good.
Yeah. And
Um
they give him little side plots that don't make any sense. Like I
yeah.
used to love the ending of Troy and Abed in the morning, which like
Yeah.
makes no sense. Like, why are you guys doing this? But they're so funny. They're like
all
putting
those
on like fake TV shows at the end of every episode. It's great.
all those endings are great. So that's
Yeah.
the favorite thing that I've been consuming,
Nice.
and definitely the dialogue is brilliant.
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah, I think I've got two. The like fictional thing that I've been consuming that I love is the completely made up adventures of Dick Turpin. Have
I
you
don't know
watched
that.
that?
No.
It's on Apple. And again, the casting, it's one of those things where it's kind of taken a genre and twisted it some. The casting is hysterical. The way they've pieced the characters together is really brilliant. The plot is it's a comedy. It's a there's a guy who's the son of a butcher, but he wants to sew fancy clothes, and so his father throws him out. So he becomes a highwayman, and he's like leading a pack of highwaymen, but he's like very fancy and full of flourish, and he never actually hurts anybody. And he's every episode they get in way over their head, and then they kind of like pull themselves out of it. It is Nigel from the Great British Bake Off
I was
is
gonna
the
say it
star
must
of
be
it.
British.
It's British, and it's hysterical. It's really funny.
Uh,
Um,
do you have Apple now?
yeah, I do have Apple now.
Okay, so have you watched Ted Lasso yet?
I have watched Ted Lasso. Yeah, I watched all the way through it. It was great. Yeah, I loved it. I think I did a bonus episode on why Ted Lasso is such a feel good thing is because it's all engine characters. Everybody's an engine to everybody. There's only one anchor in the entire show. And everybody else is like helping each other become the best version of themselves. So the show feels like this is amazing.
Right. And a lot of the plots are where one of them is not. And by the end of the episode,
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
they've they are.
Yeah.
Um, but that's what I mean. It, the character voices are brilliant, and the characters grow, as opposed to Community, which we
Yeah.
were just talking about. Every single character ends up someplace way different than where they started.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
loved
Dick
it.
Turpin's just starting. I can't tell if the character, well, I mean, the
It
main
sounds goofier than it.
character, yeah, the main character does have a lot of growth, but the rest of them are all kind of one note, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah. The other thing I'm consuming lately, I just read Kara Swisher's Burn book. I read it last week, and I
Yeah, I
loved it.
I heard her on one of the Crooked Media podcasts. She's great.
Yeah, and the book is fantastic. It's just such a like if anybody listening doesn't know who Kara Swisher is, she's kind of the nation's foremost tech reporter. She's been like reporting on Silicon Valley since 93, I think. She says in the book 92. She actually moved. She was working for the Washington Post, and she had the option to move to the Washington D.C. desk. They're like, we want to put you on the White House. And the first kind of big MySpace tech fallout had happened, and she was like, you know what, I think the actual news is going to be made in Silicon Valley. I would like to move there. And they were like, you're crazy, this is a career ending thing. and it wasn't. So she's been reporting on tech since then, and she's an interesting figure because she's so entwined with the tech world and with reporting on them, and she has relationships with all of them. So like she was one of the last people Steve Jobs spoke to, and she's been very close with Bill Gates, and she's was close with Elon Musk until he kind of became this new rendition of himself. And she made Mark Zuckerberg cry in a interview, and like it's an interesting. She's got interesting stories and a really interesting take on how like the opening line of the book is, oh, I guess it was capitalism after all, and
Yeah.
the whole book has that kind of like cynical, like you talk about the great utopia of tech, but
Right.
let's just be honest, you guys are making money. So
Yeah,
it's
she is, and maybe because she's a woman in a, boys' world of Silicon Valley or whatever, but she's sort of inoculated from the crap. Like she has, without being too I mean, she's a little bit snarky, but she just looks at everything logically and level-headedly and does not go in for any of this cult of personality stuff.
Yeah, well, and she says in
Uh,
there, there's two things she talks about in the book that kind of separate her out as a character. One, she is a masculine lesbian, and so there's never any sexual tension between her and the boys' club, and that helps her a lot because they're not hitting on her all the time. She's like other women would come into the space, and it was like a meat market, and so she doesn't fall into that category for them. So that helps. And then the other thing she talks about in the book is she never lies. And so she just gotta like, I always tell the truth. And so they'd say like, you're not gonna report this, are you? And she'd be like, yes, I am. Like, no, but please, can't we just keep this between us? And she'd be like, no, we cannot. Like, she was just like always very straightforward, always very honest. She's like, they're like, if I tell you this, if I tell you this secret, are you gonna report it? And she's like, yes, I am. And so it's just this like always like they knew exactly what they got from her and like
mhm.
who she was gonna be. And so I think over, decades it established a reputation for her. She says in the book that like people started considering it a badge of honor if you could leak to Kara Swisher. Like if you could find
Right.
something Kara didn't know, it was a big badge of honor. But yeah, it's a great book though. I highly recommend it, especially if like she goes all the way to like Sam Altman because the chapters are like all of these cult of personalities. She goes through each one. She goes all the way to the end of Sam Altman. It's an interesting, it's a fascinating book. Um, okay, story you consume that's broken recently, and how's it broken?
Yeah, I don't know. I've been reading I mentioned before, I've been reading all these cozy mysteries as a thing, and
You actually mentioned that off recording, so you got to explain it.
oh yeah,
Those are the 30 minutes you and I were talking before we hit record.
right. And we're in a bunch of other groups and stuff, so it gets
Yeah.
confusing sometimes. But so I write a series. I write a cozy thriller series, which is a genre that doesn't exist.
And
And
those are the best selling kind. The ones that
as
don't exist are the ones that
such,
really sell.
but it has excellent reviews, and people who find it tend to like it. But so I was sort of exploring nudging one way or the other, either to more serious detective or thriller,
Yeah.
or more lighthearted, you know, cozier type, but more of a mystery and more sort of traditional cozy mysteries. And so I thought I'd read a dozen and make some spreadsheets and
Yeah.
sort of
Do
figure
you
out
do
what's
your
what.
research? Yeah.
And I'm about 7 books in, and they are really mediocre. There's one, there was one where it's like really good. There's one that I really liked. Um, but it's but these are all books that have over 4-star rating and over
Yeah.
1,000 ratings. So people are rating them highly.
Yeah.
So they're finding their audience, and it's very clear that the mystery has nothing to do with it. Um,
I
as
love that.
someone who loves puzzles, loves games, loves mysteries, I have trouble reading a book where there's only one plausible suspect.
Yeah.
It's like it's clearly this person. You haven't given us anyone else. Um, and readers don't care. They don't want it to be stupid, but as long as it's sort of following the path, they're there for the ride and
Yeah.
the characters and whatever. So my theory is that if I can hit all those things that they like and actually put in a good mystery with good dialogue, I'm ahead of the game. Um,
Nice.
so we'll see. I'm kind of excited about, obviously I'm already thinking like, well, this is what this is what
Yeah.
there is an entire bookshop mystery genre, so it would be kind of silly to not jump in there
Yeah.
as a starting point.
Yeah.
But they all work from this very specific viewpoint of what makes a cozy mystery, and a lot of them don't work from any sort of uh, standard of quality that I would say, but it's a different lens. I read this interesting book called How to Write a Cozy Mystery by Natasha
Oh.
Sass, which these questions sort of mush together, so I'll sort of blend them together. We talk
Yeah.
about what I'm thinking about as an editor.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, like I feel like my critique of Community is also that there's something there that doesn't work because it doesn't progress.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's also what makes it so much fun is exactly what you're what
Yeah.
you're gonna get. Um, and maybe that's how sitcoms are like cozy mysteries. Anyway, of course they are, because this woman who wrote this book is completely in love with the show Psych,
Okay.
which is a cozy mystery every week.
Is it?
Oh
I
yeah,
guess it is. Yeah.
yeah. Um,
Yeah, it totally is. That's really funny. I never would have put those two things together, but you're right.
and so this book was fairly simplistic, but what I really liked in it was there was this little 20 chapter outline
Oh.
of what where things should go,
Oh.
and um, right at the halfway point is the second body drop. Uh,
Oh.
and if you watch Psych, if you watch any of these shows, um, and that's where there's a murder or some sort of crime at the beginning.
Yeah.
The detective gets involved. They're certain they know who did it, and when just as they go to confront them, they find that person dead.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super true. That is
Over and over
the
and over.
that is the plot of every episode of Psych, all like
Yeah,
50,000 seasons. Yeah.
exactly. But what fascinated me was how that lines up with um, the mirror moment in a more traditional, like, Save the Cat or Hero's Journey or
Huh.
write your novel from the middle. But instead of the character realizing something about themselves, like, I've got this terrible flaw that I have to overcome if I ever want to,
Yeah,
get
yeah.
my succeed or whatever. The character is instead having this realization of, oh my gosh, I've been wrong about everything.
Yeah.
And it also adheres to a 4-act instead of a 3-act structure, which I like better anyway.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's that midpoint. So, first act is setting up the world and the first crime.
Hmm.
Second act is the investigator encountering the crime and forming everything, and then the finding out they're wrong. And the third act is gathering new information, and the fourth act is the climax. And it
Nice.
was just interesting how much it mirrors the same structures that I teach and
Yeah.
use for regular fiction. It just um, sort of takes the main character out of the hot seat in some
Huh.
ways. It depends what one of the big tropes is that the sleuth is also accused of the crime
Yeah.
and they have to
Yeah.
clear their name. So
Yeah.
those tend to have a bit more of the sort of character angst than the ones where they're just trying to figure it out. But
Yeah.
uh, but yeah,
That's
but
cool.
crazy funny grandmas are a trope that I'm really done with.
The knitting circle mysteries.
No,
The
they're not even. I mean, one of them, they just tack her in there anywhere,
That's really funny.
right? So one of the early ones I read, which was one of the most rip off of Janet Ivanovich. They all
Yeah.
have they all look to her in a way, but this one was just a direct copy. And again, it was, they a 30 something woman and her grandmother who had moved to Florida as part of the witness protection program.
Gotcha. Yeah, that sounds,
And they
yeah.
weren't, grandma wasn't a little knitter. She was rode a motorcycle and had a
Gotcha.
leather jacket and,
Yeah.
all that sort of thing. And yeah, so that's going to be the hardest part for me is doing the flavor that people love. So,
Yeah. That's funny.
although another cool thing is she also talked about, I'm sure you've encountered about 3 years ago, this book about butter in storytelling. What was her name?
Butter and storytelling.
Oh yeah, you don't remember? It was just this woman wrote this book that just went all around the indie writing circles, and she was selling a ton of romance. And it's gonna kill me now because I'm the person who likes to know all the titles.
Margarine or butter, the secret ingredient of storytelling.
Maybe. Anyway, I'll find it. But the idea was that there is a secret sauce to storytelling that has to do with things that um, really excite a reader.
Huh.
Um, they're tropes, but they're like crystallized tropes. They're not big tropes. They're like, um, and that you can just pour them on, and it makes everything taste better. Uh, so, and she was using this in a cozy mystery standpoint, where like using the whatever setting you've picked, right? So if it's a bakery mystery, then like just sit down and make a list of like 100 things that are awesome about bakeries, like the smell and the jam and things,
It's
and
it's
then
not bad advice.
and
Yeah.
then make sure that you just layer those things on.
Interesting.
um and you know um yeah, I'll find that title, but she was talking about romance, and a lot of it was counterintuitive, that sort of the stuff that makes you a little uncomfortable is actually the stuff that you love
Yeah.
to read about.
Yeah.
um the So yeah, so craft wise, I'm learning a lot, which is
Nice.
great
That's
because
great.
I like to know everything.
Yeah.
But I really like to learn things. It's
That's cool.
part of my number five.
Got number 5 on the Enneagram. Let's learn. My story that's broken, this may be an unpopular opinion. Uh, I tried to watch Three Body Challenge on Netflix.
Problem. Three
Have
body
you tried
problem.
Three Body Problem? Yeah.
No, it just came on.
Yeah, it just came on.
Oh,
And
that's sad to hear.
it's really well, it's fantastically done. It's really good. It is very engaging. My problem with it, and the reason I think it's broken, is a major plot point of the story is that there are these brilliant, some of the most brilliant people in the world that have these like high powered research careers. They are given a VR headset that looks like nothing they've ever seen and is technology beyond what they know. They put it on and it takes them into an experience that's beyond anything ever anybody's ever done. And then they take it off and then they keep putting it back on. And I was like, these are the most uncurious researchers I've ever seen. I work with a lot of researchers, and I tell you, the first thing they're all doing is they're taking that shit apart. That's the first thing they're doing. But none of these people do it. They
No,
just
they're like,
keep
oh.
putting the headset back on. And I'm like, I don't know anybody that is there. One of them's like an entrepreneur who like makes all this money off of his own company, and I'm like, that guy is putting on that headset, doing it one time, walking into his production staff and be like, find another one of these and figure out how in the hell they work. And like, but none of them do it. They're all just like, oh, I'm going to put this back on again. And I'm going to engage with this VR world. And I'm like, this is so, it was something that was like, it's such a big character hole that it's kind of ruining the show. I'm like,
Yeah.
this isn't real. In fact, at one point, like in episode 3, one of the other scientists yells at them, "Why in the hell do you keep putting that thing back on?" And I was like, "Thank you, thank you." It makes no sense. She's like, "What are you doing? Why are you putting on this headset that you know nothing about?" And I'm like, "There's no way these people would do this in real life." But yeah, anyway, it's a big hole. It's one of those like you get those holes in characters that you're like, this is unrealistic, and it's so unrealistic, and yet so critical to the plot that they do this, that I'm really
Yeah,
struggling to stay attuned to the show. Um, yeah, it's tough, but
that's too
that's my
bad.
broken
I
story.
I'm leery of it because it's done by the Game of Thrones people.
Oh, is it really? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Oh,
which means you may never see a satisfying end to it.
that's true.
Um,
We just keep going forever.
uh,
In
the
their defense, they were finishing novels that weren't done yet.
yeah, um, yeah. And
Yeah.
anyway, yeah. So that book is called the first book is called Seven Figure Fiction. The woman's name is Theodora Taylor. She's just T.
Huh.
Taylor. How to use universal fantasy to sell your books to anyone.
Oh,
Um,
nice. Seven figure fiction.
seven the numeral.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Good title.
so the idea, and she's also very smart to put none of the answers in the first 10% of the book so that you can't just do the read through. But yeah, it's pretty funny that way. But yeah, it's the idea that we all sort of have these they're kind of like mini tropes. Um,
Hmm.
they're not entire storylines. They're just little aspects that like people go wild for. And I was just really impressed with how this woman took that and applied it to cozy mysteries with the idea that because almost every cozy mystery has some sort of unique setting, right?
Yeah,
Like,
it's part of the thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so just like
The bakery, the bookstore,
just
the
deep into
tavern.
it, right?
Yeah.
Just go deep into that because
That's so
people
funny.
love that
Well,
stuff.
yeah, dude, you could crush a bookstore
Yeah.
as a bookstore owner.
And the one that I read that was the best was set in a little Irish village, and it's just like all the Irishness.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
she had all the little turns of phrase and all the just like it
Yeah.
was.
I coached somebody who wrote a series that took place in a small English village, and it was always at Christmas time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, well Christmas is a big one too, right?
Yeah.
Like don't just
Yeah.
say it's Christmas, I have all the stuff.
Yeah. I'll put all of it in. Yeah. Um, I can do issues. You already did issues you're pondering as an
Yeah.
editor. I can do issues I'm pondering as an editor. I went to my first ever pitch fest. Have you ever been to a pitch fest?
No, but I saw you saying that somebody stands up and speaks until everyone tells them to
Yeah.
stop.
So I've only, here's the thing. Let me back up. I've only really engaged in conferences, mostly online and like all indie. I've never done any kind of trad publishing focused conference. And so I had a friend who was supposed to speak at this one, and she had to call out at the last minute. And so she kind of put me forward as like, hey, Jeff can come and do a talk in my place. And the guy was very gracious. And by the way, like, I'm not downing the conference. The conference was very well put together. It was excellently run. It was, everybody there got exactly what they were hoping to get. But it was a world I've never seen before. And I was like, this is a fascinating world. So there were like 20 to 25 agents there, about 200 writers. There were 3 rooms. 2 rooms, there was always a speech going on. So there were like 10 sessions, I think, 10 speeches or panels. And
But
those
you could
just
only go to
went,
5 of them.
you can only go to 5 of them because they're happening simultaneously. And then the other room is a pitch room. And so all 20 agents had like a small table in front of them with just one chair. And then you sat on the other side and you got 10 minutes. You paid for 10 minutes with them. So the cost of the conference is like $175. And then I think it was $50 for 10 minutes with an agent. And a lot of the people there had paid for like, to meet with like 3, 4, 5 agents that day. And it was so fascinating, man. They would like gather, they're like, all right, if you're in the 10 o'clock group, stand in this line in the hall. And then they'd coach them. They'd be like, look, we're going to open the door right at 10 o'clock. That's when your 10-minute timer starts. So find your agent, hustle to them right away, sit down and start talking right away, and just pitch yourself to them. And I've never, and people were like pumped. Like this was like, I was shocked. I was like, this sounds like, it feels a little like a nightmare to me, but people were really excited about it. And I'd talk to them after they come out. I'd be like, how did it go? Be like, oh, I didn't get a contract, but I learned a ton of stuff about my story and I really got a good, like, I really got good advice for my next pitch. So I've got another pitch in 20 minutes. So I'm just going to apply everything I learned to the next pitch. Like, this is so interesting. And I talked to the agents during lunch. I got to have, because I was faculty, I got to have lunch with
Mhm.
all the agents. And that was, I've never sat down with a literary agent before. So there's also a fascinating look into their world. And, they were going to talk to like 30, 40, 50 people that day. And I was like, are you going to find anybody? They're like, we might, yeah, we'll probably find one or two today. I'm like, oh, and that's interesting. And so like, and they were all very positive. I've heard people say like, don't be mad at trad publishing. There are a bunch of people that love books and kind of a messed up system.
Yeah.
And that's definitely what I saw. I was like, these are all people that love books and are very serious about what they do. And this system is really weird.
Yeah, but when you think, I mean, sure, but when you think about it, they're like, you're setting up a situation where it does not behoove them to lie at all.
Yeah.
They get nothing out of sweet talking you.
Yeah.
And if it were $300 per agent, then you'd think, oh well, they're just collecting a paycheck and then going home, right?
Yeah.
But at $50 a person, that's just to make sure people are serious. They're actually looking for somebody
Yeah.
to sign. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to them,
They
right?
were all seriously looking for clients.
Right. If they go to
Yeah.
those things and don't find any good scripts, they're going to stop going to them.
Yeah. And
There's not enough
I
money to.
pressed them at lunch. I was like, are you seriously looking for it? They're like, yeah.
Yeah.
We were really looking. There was one agent there who represented celebrity memoirs. And I was like, well, I don't think there's any of those.
Yeah.
It's like, Tom Hanks is not walking into this
Right.
workshop. But she was like, but I'm here like representing my firm. And so
Mm-hmm.
if I find somebody, I'm going to pass them on to the person who represents that. Like,
Right.
she's like, yeah, I'm not going to represent them, but I'll pass them on. So it was
Yeah.
just an interesting, like, and then they had these panel discussions. Of the 10 sessions, 5 of the sessions were like, talk to an agent. Like that's what 5 of the sessions, at least, actually, I'd say 7 of the 10 were like, talk to an agent. So
Yeah.
one of the sessions, the one you were referring to, was a 1-pager. So people could just submit a 1-pager is free. You just offered up a 1-page, the first page of your story. And the way it worked was they had a panel of 8 of the agents up in front, and there was a volunteer who was reading the pages, completely anonymous. They're like reading this anonymous first page. And when the agents would stop reading, they raised their hand. And if you got 4 agents that would stop reading, the volunteer stopped reading the page. They read probably 20 to 25 first pages. And I would say they got all the way through 7 of them. And then, but the rest of them were stopped early. And then they'd sit there and talk about what they liked and didn't like about it. And at first, super brave of those authors to put themselves out there. Super brave. But second, like, just fascinating. One, like, they didn't have like magical knowledge. I was like, yeah, that's when I would have stopped reading too. I was like, yeah, that's when you stop reading this page. But they did have good insights. What I was more surprised by was how long they read, because there were lots
Mm-hmm.
of them that I was like, I'm out. Like,
Yeah.
they got like 3 words in. I'm like, I'm done. And they like hung in there and like actually like would read through the page. I was like, oh, I would have been out of this one a long. Like there was one that was like all just world building, and they didn't call it out. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I am so done with this thing. And they were like, yeah, no, they're like, the world building was interesting enough that I'd probably try to work with you to get it into something, into some
Yeah.
kind of
Right.
conversation.
Because
So
they're thinking about what can this be?
yeah, they're thinking about what it can become. Whereas I'm like, as more a coach slash editor, I'm like, yeah, I'm done with this. I'm not done. I'm not reading this for fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That is
Yeah.
fascinating. And it's, again, I'm out of a literary fiction background and a lover of long, difficult literary fiction, but I will admit that like your first page has to be perfect.
Yeah,
And we don't, maybe we should pass it around more, right? Like
yeah.
that's a really good exercise. It's brutal, but
It was
like
brutal, but it was great. And it was good to
yeah.
hear. Like it was one of those things that was actually really valuable to listen to. I was like, this is fascinating. And I will say, like, when I started writing almost 10 years ago now, I'm like 9.5 years into this publishing world. When I started working on fiction, I had like a couple goals set out. I was like, I want to write a marketable series. That was one of the things I wanted to do. Still haven't done that. Still haven't finished a stupid series. And then I was like, and I want to write some things that like really move people. Like that was another one. And then I've always had this other one that's like, and I want to win a Pulitzer.
Oh yeah, that one.
I want to win a Pulitzer. I said that when Jay Thorne like first met me, he was like, "What are your goals as a writer?" And I told him those three. And he's like, "Okay, well that last one kind of stands out as its own thing." So, but if I ever want to like even take a shot at that goal, I have to go trad. No, ain't nobody giving an indie author a Pulitzer. So that's its own like weird. I don't even know how that prize works, but I'm sure there's a huge gamification of it that
Oh
I
yeah.
am not privy to. But anyway, so at some point I'm gonna give this like trad thing a shot. But yeah. So anyway, it was interesting learning experience. Problem I'm pondering. All right. Any questions or challenges you're facing as an editor? You've recently
Um,
faced as an editor.
no, I think that sort of wraps in with the other things I was talking about, and just curious as an editor how structure is just like it's just there no matter what.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it it really is, and it tweaks a little from genre to genre, but uh if you understand structure, you're in such a better place to give the reader what they want.
Interesting.
Give them an experience, and they don't know it. They're not
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't like this book because the second body drop was in the wrong place.
No, they just feel
It's
it.
just they got bored because they were waiting for that
Yeah.
twist that didn't come when
Instinctually
they.
waiting for it.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I,
So
I'm struggling with how much backstory is necessary. I'm really playing with the idea that zero backstory is necessary. Um, the backstory adds texture, but is not necessary to the story. So I'm really struggling with that. That's my that's my new because I
interesting.
I keep editing these pieces, and the writers keep having these conversations in the stories that have this complex backstory. If you're listening to this and you're one of my clients, it's not just you. I'm talking to like 7 or 8 people I'm working with.
George.
Y'all are all doing this. And so, and I love you. I'm not mad at you. I'm just, it's not you. So alone. Probably is you, but it's not you alone. So so I'm really starting to question like if I deleted all of the backstory from a novel, would it still work? And I'm really questioning that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
probably depends on the novel. I think
it definitely depends on the novel.
if you do that, then showing character change has to happen in real time.
And
You
that's what I'm
can't.
questioning. I'm like,
Yeah.
doesn't it have to happen in real time anyway?
Mhm.
Because if it all happens in the past, who cares?
Right.
Anyway, yeah,
Again, it's if you can put it into realistic sounding dialogue, then you can,
yeah,
because what bothers me is the hey, I'm gonna stop, I'm gonna, or I was working on one today where um it's about this guy and it sort of introduces the parents and then tells you all about the parents. It's like I don't need to know all about
yeah.
I
I
don't
don't
need
even
to
know.
know. I
Yeah,
don't need to know how they met. I don't
yep,
need to know, unless it's going to directly affect him. So I think you
yeah.
do need some backstory that affects how the character is changing, but maybe not.
Maybe
It's
I
interesting.
might back off of this opinion in a
Yeah.
month. I might be at a different place in a month and be like, all of the backstory, please. But right now, I just find myself leaving 1,000 notes that are like, is this important to this story?
Mhm.
Like, why is this here?
Yeah.
And they'll always be like, well, it helps you get to know the character a little bit more. I'm like, cut it.
Yeah.
I get to know the character right now or not at all. You don't get to go back in time. Yeah, anyway. Um, okay, we got to do questions for each other. You want to go
Okay.
first or you want me to go first?
Sure. Mine's easy.
Okay.
Multiple POVs.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you're getting more and more and more of them.
Mm-hmm.
I love it when it's done well,
Mm-hmm.
but the more, the more I teach people about a novel being an emotional journey, and not a plot journey,
Mm-hmm.
the more I feel like people are doing multiple POVs because they don't know how to tell that single strong story.
Yes.
And they think, well, I really got to get this information in, so I have to switch to a different character's
Don't do that.
point of view.
Yeah.
Or they think complexity adds enjoyment, or they think if the story is too simple, then it's not.
It's not a good story. Yeah.
Right. Because I like it when it's done well.
Yeah.
My God, one of my favorite books of all time is this book that you would hate called Possession by A.S. Byatt, where she's doing like 8 different. I mean, she's doing 2 different poets who have different styles of poetry, and she's writing their
Oh,
poetry, and then she's doing
oh,
like their wives' journals, and
oh, you're
it's
hurting
just,
my heart. Yeah.
I know, but she's so good.
Nice.
Uh, but again, there's a really, really emotional story at the middle of that novel that in some ways gets a little taken away from by all the pyrotechnics.
Yeah. I think so. Is the question like, what do I
the
think?
the
Why do I think
question
people are doing?
is is my hunch right? And if you were going to tell people that they should do multiple POVs, why should they?
So there's certain genres that demand it. If you're writing in fantasy, it's very tough to write an epic fantasy in a single POV. And so, um,
Because it's not epic.
because it's not epic. So you got to do, and that's just expected. It's kind of the Dungeons and Dragons of it all. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's all these players sitting at the table. That's kind of how we expect to read our fantasy. Same with sci-fi. Sci-fi is tough to keep in a single POV nowadays. You need to like, and people like the multiple story arcs happening that like all come together in something. Um, there's something about people writing literary fiction in multiple POVs that I don't fully understand the attraction. Um, I say this as somebody I don't think I think of my 11 books, I think 4 of them are in single POV. So I'm the problem, it's me. Um, but there is something, and I think with the literary fiction book, a lot of times there's like I I'm adding multiple POVs because it brings depth. And I
Right.
don't know that it always does.
Or like theme is what the book is about and not the characters.
Yeah. And a lot of times I tell those authors, like, as I'm working on their work, I'm like, okay, one of these POVs is really, really strong. One of these POVs is mediocre. You either need to like bring the mediocre POV up to par, or you have to make it a one POV story. And it's not necessarily mediocre in that like it only has I'm jumping because there is the problem of like I've added extra POVs because I have like information I can't get out unless I get to them. I find those more in like thrillers or mysteries or even romance. Um, the literary fiction multiple POVs tends to like what makes it weak is like the first character has a really powerful theme, a really strong growth arc. That's actually the story you want to write. The second character, you're like putting in for complexity because you like the idea that you're going to contrast these 2 characters, but the second character doesn't really have a growth arc. You're kind of confused about what the theme is. You're not real sure what this character is doing. They only exist in relationship to your first character. And so I'm always telling people, I'm like, if that's what you're doing, then like you either need to flush that character out more so that they like actually have their own life, or you need to end that POV. And I try to tell people, I'm like, if you're writing a multiple POV story, these every POV should be able to pull out. You should be able to pull out and make your own novella out of it. If you can't do that, then you don't have a multiple POV story. You have a messed up single POV story with all these weird offshoots. And but yeah, so I don't know. I get it a lot at the Dialogue Doctor because we hit there's certain genres of writers that we've never broken into. And I think a part of it, I think, is because craft seems to be more important to some genres than others. Like we don't have a lot of romance writers in the
Mhm.
Dialogue Doctor community. And I think that's because they're writing so fast, they don't have time for our nonsense. I'm like, how many engines do you have? They're like, I wrote 3 books while you're trying to figure out how many engines are in your book. So there's that. There's that. Um, but yeah, there's so I don't but that's my rant about POVs.
Yeah. Well, I think the kind of romance writer you describe is often the kind who sort of has a innate ear for dialogue,
Yeah,
right?
and they know what they're doing. It's like you're saying
Yeah.
with cozy mystery, like for a lot of the genre writers who are trying to hit whale readers, who are like trying to make their bones on Kindle Unlimited. So if you're making your bones on Kindle Unlimited, you're not going for mass market, you're going for a whale, like whale focused genre centric
Mm.
reader. And those writers, like there's a line of good enough. And what we do at the Dialogue Doctor is we like work craft, and it's not necessary for the good enough whale reader. If you're a romance reader that's reading, 70 books a year, you will forgive craft because they're hitting the emotion, because you're reading the book in a night, right? Like you're not like obsessing over this book. It's less like a gourmet meal and more like fast food. So you're just like rolling through it. So does somebody need to go to culinary school to make a Big Mac? Not really, right? Like, does that make the Big Mac less valuable or less special? No, there's way more Big Macs sold than like porterhouse steaks every day. But like, so there's that, like, I don't, so I'm not, that illustration doesn't mean to demean anybody or diminish anybody. It's just a different goal, right? Like, it's a different, so I think,
Yeah, I guess I'm
yeah.
just pushing back a little to say that some of those people do know how to do dialogue,
Oh,
and
I totally think they do.
maybe it's
I
just through
totally think they
volume,
do.
right?
Yeah.
Like you just get better at what you do.
Well, there's just
But
naturals. There's people that are
yeah,
just natural at it. But what I'm not willing to say is that if you're writing in that genre and you're producing books quickly, it means you know what you're doing.
yeah,
I think that the bar for what is good enough when you're shooting for like that whale readership genre, super genre specific, is just naturally lower than if you're trying to write a literary fiction masterpiece that you're going to take to a pitch fest,
yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
they're totally different bars. So um and I actually think it's really important to know your bar and to like understand what you're shooting for.
And I haven't, of the seven that I've read in the past 4 weeks, 2 weeks, I don't know, it's a blur, but none of them have been like, wow, that is really amazing dialogue.
Yeah, and but they don't need it, right? Like that's
Yeah.
the thing, is they don't need
Well, they
it.
could use it. It would be better if they had it.
It would be better. But would that improvement sell them more books?
So, genre bender, because she's part cozy, part hard-boiled detective. But Louise Penny, I would say, if you've read any Louise Penny,
I have. She's good.
she does this thing where the cozy part is in Three Pines, like when all the people are hanging out at the bistro or whatever. And then there's also the brooding detective
Yeah.
part. But those cozy parts, she must polish that dialogue because it is
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah.
crystal. It is amazing.
Yeah.
It is incredibly witty and nimble and still
Hmm.
in character voice and
Yeah.
plays off character voice.
And her
But
big
she only does
cast
a book a year. But
scenes.
she only does a book a year.
Yeah. And her big cast scenes are great. right? Like
Hmm.
they're like you'll get a room with her of like 3 to 4 characters, and
Yeah.
it's fantastic.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like the books that I think a lot of us love, like everybody kind of loves TJ Klune right now, rightfully so.
Hmm.
Is single POV every book. He doesn't jump POV, and so like the House of the Cerulean Sea is Linus. That's the story,
Yeah.
right? Like, and it's a or like Bachman. Like I'm a big fan of Bachman. He does multiple POV most of the time, but A Man Called Ove, which I would argue is probably his most successful, is a single POV.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so it's interesting. I think it's a yeah, yeah, it's an
Right.
interesting thing.
Great. Well, now I'm excited to work on my multiple POV novel for the Dash.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, hey, by the way, nerds, we did season 1 in a single POV, 66 chapters, a behemoth nonsense book in a single POV. Second season, we immediately went to 5 POVs.
That's to keep you sane.
That's true. That's to keep JP like keeping me under control.
Yeah.
Actually, it was JP's idea. He's like, this would be more fun if we get out of this one guy's head. I was like, yeah, that sounds let's do that. Because I'm kind of tired of that guy too. Um, yeah, okay. So here's my question for you. You've published indie. Is there anything, and mostly because this pitch fest has been on my mind, is there anything that would convince you to go trad?
Yeah. Television.
Oh, a television deal?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I mean that would have to be tried, but so
They
far they're
do
not
come with
really
trad. Television deals don't come with it. I mean,
not
that's
yet.
not true.
Yeah.
Like Silo was Hugh
Right.
Howey.
But
Yeah.
not till it was
Not till it's
republished
trad.
by
Yeah.
yeah. Um the I did a short piece for the conference last fall that was what I would think of as literary fiction.
Yeah, it's a good piece.
Um I can totally see myself doing a book like that
Mm.
and trying. I mean, why not try?
Yeah.
And I could also see, this book that I'm going to work on that I stopped halfway through is more of a like blockbuster summer thriller,
Hmm.
which and definitely stand if it was a standalone is probably what I would start with.
Yeah.
Um because you just can't do much with it's very hard to do something with a standalone indie publishing.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean you shouldn't write those if you've got a great idea for one, but it does mean that perhaps that's a great opportunity to be like, you know what, I'm going to pitch this a few times and
Yeah.
see if it goes anywhere.
Totally.
um the Yeah, so and I can see it as like, airport mass market with the totally cheesy thriller cover on
Yeah.
it. And then the other end of that spectrum is something like really character driven literary that I really care about. I
Hmm.
think I would want to see if I could get it out there to a real house.
Yeah.
Not
That's
to
cool.
diminish the stuff that I do on my own, but I just like my books are doing what I want them to do, except for making money. Uh, but they're meant to be fun, and the people who are reading them and reviewing them are like, this was a lot of fun. This is great.
Yeah.
And I think we've spoken about this before, but and and I tell this to every new author, and they don't believe me, but the first time you get a review by somebody that you don't know who read your book and really liked it,
That's
it's
great.
just like it's like
It's
drugs.
yeah, it's the
It's
most
like I don't
amazing
it's
feeling.
also inexplicable. You're like,
Hmm.
how could this person that I don't know in some other part of the world
Have
read the
read
book
this thing.
and get it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
100%. Yeah.
and
Uh
and if you're doing trad, you'll wait forever for that.
yeah. What it is funny, like that's what's funny about trad is that like, I have a trad memoir coming out and I gave it to Lake Drive. I've given them 3 drafts. The problem is they keep giving it back to me, going like, "Do you want to add anything?" And I'll add like a whole chapter.
Yeah.
And so, like, stop giving it to me. Take what it is. But it's not coming out till November. Like, I'm done. I won't touch the
Right.
manuscript again. I was done in December, and it's not coming out for a year. And I've
Yeah.
been told that's actually fast. Like, oh.
Yeah.
But part of me doesn't care. Part of me is like, great, I don't have to think about it anymore. Tell me when
Right.
I need to market it.
But but when you see, when you see these big authors on tour, they're all working on something that's not what they're promoting.
Yeah,
It must be so weird.
it's
Like
funny.
I, and I've talked to many authors and they're like, yeah, I'm promoting this book and I'm so done with it. Like
Yeah, I was done with it a year ago.
I was done with it a year ago. And
Yeah, that's really funny. Which is hard for me. I tend to forget what I wrote. So, like, part of the problem is I know by November I'm gonna have to read that book to market it because I will not remember anything that's in it. I'm like, I don't know what it says. Yeah, anyway.
but I think if you've written a really great standalone that means a lot to you, it's worth taking 6 months to write agent
Yeah,
letters. You can
yeah,
always indie pub it after
yeah.
because it's not, I don't know how it's going to find an audience indie pubbed as a single standalone book.
And I will,
Unless you've written 20 books and you have 10,000 people on your email list, and then great, you've already got 3,000 people who are going to buy it when it comes out.
yeah, yep. All right, man. Anything else you want to talk about? We haven't covered tonight?
No, that was great. People
Okay.
miss the really good, backyard wildlife conversation we had before we started. But
Yeah, my
for me, it's just bunnies.
it's
We
just
get
buddies.
lots of bunnies,
Yeah, no,
which is great.
foxes and groundhogs. I didn't tell you this. I woke up last night um at 4 a.m. before we turned on the recording, just to clue anybody in that's still listening. I have a very large like wildlife ecosystem happening in my backyard and behind my backyard of foxes and groundhogs and stray cats, and there's all kinds of things back there. Rabbits, we get a lot of rabbits. I woke up last night at it was like 4:30 in the morning to a cat screaming. And I looked out my back window and it had been caught by a fox and was in the middle of being killed. And
Nice.
the screaming lasted for like less than a minute. And then the fox was gleefully walking away with this alley cat. But it was really loud for like a minute and a half. Yeah.
Thanks
Very
for sharing.
intense. Yeah. Very intense. Freaked me out. I woke up, I was like, is that a child screaming outside?
Yeah,
And I was
that's
like,
what I would do.
no, that is definitely a cat. And then I looked outside, and sure enough, right there in my back porch light, there's a very large fox killing a cat in the backyard. Not my cat, just the
Yeah.
stray. We have all kinds of stray cats. There's several women in the neighborhood that feed the stray cats. And I'm like, you're really just feeding the foxes. That's all you're doing. That's all you're doing. You're just feeding, you're supplying the foxes with
Foxes gotta eat.
an unending supply of meat all year. All right, I'm going to stop the recording. We can
Yeah.
talk a little bit more.